Good morning, everybody. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you for coming and meeting over the idea of Shakti, the divine feminine. Very happy to welcome Alison Conte, a mystic, a leadership coach, integrating spirituality and leadership, very connected to a sense of mother from other side of the world. We live in Auroville, the land of the mother. And that is represented by Nilima Bhatt, a visionary author, expert in leadership and gender equality. She has been connected to their sense of mother for long, long years. Welcome, Nilima Bhatt. And what is beautiful is the International Women's Day. And what is more beautiful, that we are talking about Mother, the Divine Feminine, from two different cultures and seeing the synthesis and oneness in that space. I personally am very, very excited for what is going to emerge, what the two goddesses is going to bring it down for us as a gift on such auspicious day. And before that, we will have a small invocation of Divine Mother and inviting Malika to come and do the invocation of the Mother before we hand over to Alison and Nilima Bhatt.
I hope I remember it perfectly. This is 32 names of Durga. If you know it, you can do it along with me. Om Durga Durga Tishmani Durga Padmini Varini Durga Machedini Durga Sadhini Durga Nashini Durgato Dharini Durga Nihantri Durga Mapaha Durga Magyanada Durga Daityaloka Davanala Durgama Durgama Loka Durgamatma Swarupini Durgama Sura Samhantri Durgama Yudhadharini Durgamangi Durgamata Durgamya Durgameshwari Durga Bhima Durga Bhama Durga Bha Durga Darini Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Malika, for invoking Mother. Thank you all of you again. And I'm inviting Nilima Bhatt to take over.
Thank you, Uma, my sister in the adventure. So before we start, I want to just anoint some holy water, which is from the Ganga, from Kailash Mansarovar. It's from all the holy rivers across the world, and most recently from the Triveni Sangam of the Mahakumbha. So I'll just sprinkle it around, and then after that, we'll go into a 1-minute silence together to connect with our own Divine Mother within, right? So that's the next few moments.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Alison Conte, and following the holy water, I'm going to anoint myself and Nilima with the holy oil of Sophia, and I will do that on behalf of all of you.
Such a beautiful day, and I must begin by thanking Jaya for creating this beautiful space called the Unity Pavilion, and it has a peace table. There could not be a more appropriate intentional space for the work we want to do here today, which is to unify our world, ourselves, and our communities around the idea and the being of the Divine Mother herself. Across names and cultures, she is the one same being. And in her, we will find the unity and the peace that our hearts long for, right? So thank you, Jaya, for the space. Thank you, Isabella, for all the support you did. Thank you to all the lovely Shaktis who did the altar flower arrangements. And thank you, Uma, for putting it all together so quickly. Anu, Majumdar, so grateful. If I've forgotten to name anybody, please know that we hold you. Malika, for your beautiful invocation of Durga, Ma Durga. So lovely. So we thought a good way to start is I will introduce Alison to you because we should know the years of work done that brings us to this moment, right? And she will introduce me. We hold it in all humility and sincerity and gratitude. And hopefully as you hear what you're hearing, you'll be able to recognize parts of yourselves and how you have been engaged in some of these ideas and works yourself for many, many years, maybe many lifetimes, right? So with that, I'll introduce Alison. Alison Conti, founder, Sophia Leadership, serves as a bridge between the worlds of spirituality and leadership. She's a mystic, shamanic practitioner, spiritual guide, ordained priestess, speaker and author, and also a C-suite advisor, executive leadership instructor, and organizational development consultant. In her role as priestess and co-founder of the Sanctuary for Sacred Union and the Schools for Sacred Union, Alison supports the leaders of the Great Turning with mystery school teachings, potent ceremonies, and spiritual guidance to inform their leadership. Alison received the title of Master Teacher from her spiritual elder, Grandmother Lane San Moonwalker, a wisdom keeper in the Apache tradition who oversees the work of the Sanctuary for Sacred Union. As founder of Sophia Leadership, Alison aims to support one of the most important key shifts that is needed in these times: the evolutionary leadership by women whose wisdom is sourced in the sacred feminine. At Harvard Business School, her executive leadership programs have drawn upwards of 5,000 participants across the globe. Prior to her post at Harvard, Alison served on the faculties of Center for Creative Leadership, the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland, and the Integral Center, and worked as a master executive coach in the Weatherhead School of Management Executive Education program. She holds a master's degree in positive organizational development from Case Western Weatherhead School of Management. She's a certified spiritual intelligence coach and Gestalt practitioner. Alison has co-authored 3 books and is working on a 4th. Thank you for your service, Alison.
Thank you, Neelima. And now I will introduce Neelima. Welcome. Come on in. Neelima Bhatt is founder of Shakti Leadership and the former distinguished professor, Faculty of Excellence at Tec de Monterrey in Mexico. She is also a visionary, a speaker, an author, and a coach in the fields of personal mastery, leadership, gender equality, and well-being. Her extensive pioneering body of work, and it is extensive, let me tell you, it's encompassed in 2 books. One is called Shakti Leadership, embracing feminine and masculine power in leadership, in business. And the second book is called My Cancer Is Me, The Journey from Illness to Wholeness. Together, these two books outline a cutting-edge, holistic, and integrated approach to leadership and resilience that is so needed to create the world that works for all. Nilima is an active supporter of conscious capitalism and women's international networking. She was conferred an honorary PhD by Jharkhand Rai University in 2022 for her iconic and outstanding contribution in the field of women's empowerment. At a time when the world is looking for new models, Shakti leadership has been referenced in many multilateral organizations and audiences such as Nobel Peace Prize Forum, the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. She is currently focused on building the Shakti Fellowship with the University of San Diego in the United States, with WIN, and with Skolkovo Flow, which is a business school in Russia, with a mission to create 100,000 women changemakers by the year 2030. She's up to big things. She is also working on the Truth and Reconciliation movement, which I know is very near and dear to her heart, a global movement for healing collective trauma and leading inclusive peace globally. And her third focus is the Shakti Kumbh, which you've done here. You've created that here. For recovery and regeneration of the Indic knowledge system of Shakti, for which she received the Indica Cultural Changemaker Fellowship Award. Nilima is an expert in Indian wisdom and wellness traditions, a certified Shivananda teacher and practitioner of the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. She is a trained dancer and has co-founded a dance company in her spare time called Sri Shakti to demystify Indic art and wisdom for international audiences. So welcome, Nilima. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Alison. Everything that was shared is with the grace of the Mother and being an instrument of whatever grace flows through. And I know you and I believe that of our work and how we hold our work. So all glory belongs to her, right?
And we offer any benefit or merit of this conversation to her and for the benefit of all beings.
Thank you. So on that note, should we do the seeding of intention for the next hour and a half?
Yes,
so
can you speak to our intention? Why are we here?
Okay.
Why are we here?
Why are we here? So I've been talking to Alison for many years now, and we have sensed there is something that she holds through the Sophianic tradition that needs to connect with what we have here in the Shakti tradition. Because somehow the two worlds of East and West can find common ground in Sophia and Shakti, right? That was always the reason I was so drawn to be in touch with you, Alison. And when International Day comes along and she happens to get on a plane and says, I'm coming around this time to India, and I said, I'll also take you to Rishikesh, which is my guru's land, Swami Shivananda. I think it was meant to be, Alison. You can tell the story of your visa.
You want me to tell the story?
Yes.
So some months ago, I can't remember when, but sometime in 2024, Nilima reached out to me out of the blue and invited me to come to India. And I wrote back to her and said, I don't want to come to India. And she said, oh yes, you will fall in love with Mother India. And I heard those words. I knew who was talking to me. It was not just this woman. It was Divine Mother coming through. That's how she talks to me. And so I said yes and found my way here. And she brought quite the threshold guardian. Right before I was to board the plane, I found out that I needed to have a visa. I didn't know. And so I hastily applied online for my visa, but I was told it might take 72 hours, and I was flying in 18 hours. So we got on the phone together and prayed to Divine Mother. We asked for a miracle. And then the swaha, I gave it to her. I went to sleep, and I got up in the morning, and thanks to Nilima, who channeled Divine Mother again, she said, you must get on the plane to New York, even though you don't have your visa. And so I was coming from Colorado, so 4-hour flight to New York. And in the while I was traveling, the visa arrived while I was in the air to New York City. So we got our miracle, Jaima.
I think really the purpose why we are here, I don't think you and I fully really know, Alison. Clearly, the Divine Mother has a plan. Otherwise, she would not have had that miracle. When that visa happened in less than 24 hours, I said, okay, we're good, Ma. We're good to go, Alison. No worries. Here on, she's in charge. We just have to show up, you know. There is a reason we are coming together. And if we planned this with Uma for the 8th of March. And I was saying to Uma, should we cancel? Should we postpone? And we said, just hold it. And then she needed it to happen today. And so the visa happened in time, right?
Yeah.
Anything else you wish to add before we ask for their reason to be here?
No, I think you named it, that we have a sense that it's important that the Eastern and Western understanding of Divine Mother start to come together. And I would say that's really so far, that's our understanding of what we're doing here.
Yes. So what we thought is all of you who have brought your presence here, a very, very sacred presence, take a moment after we guide you, I'll gong you again, to really tune in, to seed your intention for the next hour or so, right? To connect with yourself and imagine that this session is over. You're leaving from here, but you're leaving very fulfilled because you received what you came to receive, right? So that is my invitation to you. I will gong you and I will guide you. And then we'll take a few moments tuning in and get really grateful. So that's the month of March. So we were with sincerity in January, we were with humility in February, and I think we should be in gratitude in March now, if that's how it goes. So we will tune in with a sense of profound gratitude as if the grace has already given you the gift for why you are here today, okay? So we imagine we are tasting that fruit, and then we will completely let it go so we can now park it aside, all our expectations, we can park them, and we can fully be present to enjoy the next hour or so that we have together. Okay? So let's seed our intention. You can keep your feet on the floor, straighten your spine, and gently tap your heart with your fingertips. Nice deep breath up and down the spine. Cover your heart with your palm. Step into a pillar of white light like we have in the Matre Mandir. This pillar of white light connects heaven and earth through your spine. Centered in this sacred heart. You take a deep breath and you imagine yourself entering your own sacred heart, standing under a shower of bliss and grace. And you are receiving all the grace for this 8th of March, 2025. If you have any intention for today, if there is something you need help and guidance for or protection from, Take a moment to ask so you can receive. You have received the answer to your aspiration. Taste it fully with all your 5 senses. Trust it has come. As Mother says, every prayer is answered, every call is met. Feeling full and fulfilled, grateful. Give thanks. Now take a deep breath and completely let go the fruit of this gift. Give it to the Divine Mother for the good of all sentient beings. Bring that smile of gratitude to every cell of your body. You have seeded gratitude and intention into every cell of your body. And welcome here now. Slowly open your eyes.
So I'm going to invite each of you to make a connection here. See if you can find 2 other people to join with in a group of 3. And we'll give you a few minutes, 5 minutes, to have a conversation, introduce yourself. And the prompt for your conversation is to talk about, why is it important that you are here? Why is it important that we are here? For yourself and for the world. Why is it important that you're here? You could be doing many other things, but for some reason it's important that you came. So that's the conversation for the next 5 minutes. Find 2 other people to chat with and introduce yourself to. Ring the bell. A little bit. Wow. Come back now, please. And I would like to hear from one or two or three of you. What was that conversation like? What did you come up with in terms of why it's important that we're here? So I don't need to hear from every group, but let's have a few brave souls to share.
Just one or two sharings, please.
We got to that bit right at the end. I think you'd already tapped the bowl. But I think we realized that we're going to find out. We're being called in by the divine to do the work of the divine in some way.
So we're all here.
At one point, I feel like we asked to be here deep down, and that ask is getting fulfilled right now. So.
One share from this side. Why is it important to be here today? What brought you here today?
I see you. Frida, is that your name?
Okay.
I'm very interested to know your purpose about the subject of femininity. Actually, I write a book with a woman about the energy of Shiva and Shakti. And it's very important to understand that the first temple is a woman. This is a temple, the body is a temple, and how connect, and it's the best way, sacred love, for the height spirituality, for the height consciousness. This is a wonderful way, and I write a book about this subject, and it's why I am here today.
Thank you for your service.
Uma.
So I'm here to find a language to find her all across. We are very spoiled, pampered community of Auroville and Pondicherry, soaked in mother's energy and take her for granted. But when I travel and I'm outside India and I ask, where is the mother I can meet? And I'm looking for that connect, languaging that question. When I go out, I will language it differently. And I'm looking forward to that line which Alison is going to give.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. So Alison and I ourselves, we have been teaching between us 60 years of work. So we could have planned a very detailed, mentally designed program for today. But we knew that's not what the Divine Mother would want. So all we did yesterday for about 3 hours is we shut ourselves up in the room in our altar and we just listened. What is it that she wants to be shared today? And this is what has come. So maybe I'll just set the ground and then we'll do the stories, right? So the feminine is very much about the mythic, It's mythopoetic in nature. The masculine is the rational, logical clarity, the so-called left brain, and the feminine is the mythic, creative, intuitive, poetic right brain, right? The feminine. So in line with doing something mythopoetic today to connect with the idea of Sophia and the idea of Shakti, we're going to tell you 2 stories. Because mythology is psychology, according to Joseph Campbell. And when we listen to these 2 stories, I want us to listen to what does that mean to me and inside me, right? How do I hold the masculine in me? How do I hold the feminine in me? And there are stories from our cultures. So the Egyptian culture predates Greece, and ancient Greece is considered to be the source of the West. Western wisdom and civilization. And of course, India holds the East and is the mother source for much of what has informed Asia here, right? So she's going to tell a story from the Egyptian tradition, and then I'll tell a story from the Indic tradition. And it's completely relevant to our inquiry today, exploration today of what is the feminine, what is the masculine, how do we hold that, who is Sophia, who is Shakti, right? So with that, over to you. Do you want to tell Osiris?
Yes, okay. But I'm going to tell it from my personal experience. Because this whole thing started yesterday when we were in conversation, and she wanted me to talk about who is Sophia. And I said, well, it's not the same as it is in the West, where you have a thousands-year-long tradition of teachings and scriptures and practices and temples and this whole lineage devoted to the divine feminine. Here in the West, we have lost that. And so the lineage that I hold, the Sophianic lineage, is one of Gnostic, if you know that word, Gnostic remembrance. We are in our inner knowing, deep in our inner knowing, we are remembering who she is and who we are in relationship to her. And so there's not a long legacy of scripture and teachings and schools and all of the things. We just don't have that. So it's coming through those of us who have served her many times in past lives, and we are now remembering her, and that's what's happening in the West. So that's how this whole conversation started, and I started to tell her, well, one of the ways it comes through me, the remembrance comes through me, is I fall into a sort of trance state, and I have a memory, or I have a vision, and then the teaching comes from that. So I shared with her this story of one day I was, this is many years ago, it was over 10 years ago, I was very distraught. I was not in good shape emotionally. I was upset about my, let's call it was not my husband at the time, it was actually a friend, but a masculine being who was in my life, but who was really not treating me well. And I was so upset about it that I had to go out for a walk in nature and ask for guidance. And I found myself at some point sitting down on a stone, on a big boulder. I live in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. So I'm up in the mountains. I sit down on this stone and I just fell into this trance state and had a vision of my partner, my friend, in this life, but it's a kind of archetypal dream that I had, an archetypal vision that I had. And in this vision, he was in the underworld, in the shadow lands, in the dark place. And I had the understanding that it was on me, it was up to me to go and get him. And so I had to make a journey into the underworld myself. And I realized while I was down there, he was not whole. This masculine being that was so important to me was dismembered. Meaning, he had, his head was over here, his arm was over there, his foot was over here. He was just in pieces. He was in pieces. And when I saw that, my heart cracked open, because prior to that, I was angry. I was mad. I was upset with him. I did not like it, I was in my feminine shadow of complaining, criticizing, collapsing. This is what the feminine does when she's in shadow. So that's where I had started. But when I came down into the underworld and I saw that he also was in shadow. He also was in the underworld. He was totally taken apart, dismembered, pieces everywhere, not whole. That cracked my heart open to compassion and love. And through the love for him, all the anger went out the door, and my love for him took over. And I went around the underworld gathering the pieces of him and pulling them all back together with my love. And when he was all back together, we held hands and we were able to come back up into the light together. So that's my story. That's my personal vision and story. And I found out later that it's a mythic story. This is the story of Isis, the Egyptian queen, my priestess, master. So I want to invoke her presence now, Mother Isis. We thank you so much for your gifts and your story. Thank you so much for your wisdom. And please come here and be with us. And so Isis had the story, same story. She had a partner, Osiris. It's a long story. I'm not going to tell you the whole story of Isis and Osiris, but very similar to what happened to me. Her partner was dismembered and pieces of him thrown all around. And it was up to her, through her love, to bring him back together and to reunite, not just to reunite his pieces, but to reunite him with her, the divine masculine and the divine feminine.
I'm getting goosebumps. Take a moment to just receive that mythic story, because mythic stories are medicine. Just like pills and tablets can heal the body, myths can heal the mind and the emotions. And the ruptured, fractured psyche can heal with myth. So there is medicine in the story that you just heard about the dismembered masculine and how he is healed and made whole with the love of the feminine. And then the sacred union between the two has to take place, and they walk hand in hand back into the light. We have a similar and complementary story in India. This time, it is the dismembered feminine. So I'm going to tell that story and invoke Shiva and Shakti. Shiva's first wife was Sati. The word Sati is short for Shakti. So Shiva had given half of himself away, the creative part of himself, the feminine part of himself. He gave it to Brahma, the creator, because Brahma needed to create the world. And you can't do that without the creative energy, Shakti. So Shiva's great sacrifice was to give up half of himself. So he went back into being shunya, being nothingness, pure consciousness, so that she could be used by Brahma to make the creation. It's a long story, but when she's born as Sati to this very egoistic Prajapati Daksh, who thinks he rules the world, he's a mind-born son of Brahma, and he hates Shiva. The father of Sati hates Shiva. So long story short, he's really against their love. They do marry with all kinds of divine intervention, but eventually Daksha cannot bear it, and he sets up a beautiful sacrifice to invoke all the powers of the universe for the good of the universe. He calls Brahma, he calls Vishnu, he doesn't call Shiva. So you're calling creative energy, you're calling preservation energy, but you're not calling the transformation energy. What do you get? You get cancer, right? Something that just builds, and doesn't know how to transform. So this is a falsehood. So what happens to Sati? She is, after all, the great mother. She is appalled, she is upset, she is angry. She's saying, how dare you deny Shiva? that is the ultimate denial of the process of creation and the divinity of creation. How can you deny Shiva? So to stop that fire ceremony that would try and establish that there can be a creation without a Shiva, can you imagine what that is? Imagine a cancerous creation, right? So she has to stop it. So she throws herself into that fire. She says, I shall desecrate your ceremony. So that obviously when a being is burning in that, you cannot use it for puja anymore, right? So she desecrates the ceremony by jumping into it herself. In the process, she is dead effectively in that body, in that human form. So just like you have the lament of Isis, there's a beautiful story in the Egyptian tradition where Osiris is chopped up, Isis is distraught. She laments and she laments and she travels all the worlds to find his pieces back together. In here, our tradition, we have the lament of Shiva. His grief is unwatchable. You can't even feel it. Your whole body will shake as you watch Shiva's grief. And he holds her dead body and he dances and he dances. His grief is so terrible that he can only dance till this world will dissolve and there'll be nothing left, right? His grief, his anger is going to destroy the creation. And so the gods go running to Vishnu, you're the preserver, do something. This creation is going to come to an end. So Vishnu sends out his discus, and his discus, Sudarshan Chakra, chops Mata Sati's body into 51 parts, and they fall all over what is today Akhanda Bharat, right? The original body of Mother India, not the politically divided body. She's fallen across all those pieces, all those parts. And Shiva runs trying to gather them. He's running trying to gather, but he's not supposed to gather them, right? They're supposed to fall, and each part falls and becomes a fertilizing force and source for that land. So today across Bharat Bhumi, and also parts of Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, which were all originally India, and according to Sri Aurobindo, will one day be put back together. There are temples to these parts, and each one is called a Shakti Peeth. And the yoni of the goddess landed in Assam in Kamakhya. And that is like a mystery and a miracle place because it's the womb waters. There is an eternal spring there. And for 3 days in June, it bleeds red. It bleeds red. And that's when they close the temple because they say the goddess is menstruating and she cannot be disturbed. And when the temple doors open, there are hordes of people who go rushing to receive the prasad of the waters, the red waters. And they put cloth in there and the cloth comes out red, and that is given out as holy offerings and prasad. So I'm telling you this story because the East, that is, if I say India represents the East in this conversation, the East is, of course, much more than Indic, but the East holds the story of the dismembered feminine. And the West holds the story of the dismembered masculine. Isn't that interesting? So how can these myths inform our realities today, our experiences as genders today? I am a woman from an Indic tradition. You are a woman from the Western tradition. How are these myths still living out in us and women like us from our cultures, right? And what does that mean? And is it something so terrible that it's a done deal and we'll forever remain fractured? Because, hey, if goddess is fractured and God is fractured, what hope for us, right? Is it just that? Or are we the ones who will then be the redemption and the way back, who will remember the dismembered God and goddess as us, in us,
And amongst us.
and amongst us? Yeah. So just put it on and off, and then, yeah, it's back.
Okay. Yeah, so let's all take a breath together. And just let all of that settle and sift, find its way into your being. These stories of separation really is what they are, stories of separation and reunification, dismemberment and remembrance. And imagine your own life, see if you can find an example in your own life of how you might have experienced such a dismembering in your being. Perhaps in your own inner masculine is fragmented. Perhaps your inner feminine is fragmented. Perhaps they don't get along with each other within you. Just see if you can find some resonance, some aspect of your being that relates to these stories that we have just told. And also, this is going on at a much bigger level than you individually. So it starts individually. We all have our own experience of separation, of dismemberment with inner masculine, inner feminine, and then we see it manifesting in our 3D world, in our outer world. So think about that for a moment. How is that manifesting in your life, in your family, in your marriage, perhaps at work, or in your community? And then that plays out on an even bigger scale around the world, amongst the nations and the peoples and the different religions, the different ethnicities, the genders, the women and the men, how we are relating to each other. See if you can see that. Relating these stories at all those levels, individual, community, and planetary.
I want to speak to that in my work with cancer and healing a body from cancer. I worked a lot with Chinese medicine. And there they have the idea of the yin and the yang, right? And according to them, a body is healthy when it is whole. The yin and the yang energy, the active yang energy, the receptive yin energy are in a dynamic equilibrium and balance. So if you go to a doctor in China and you say, I'm unwell, he first diagnoses what is the yin-yang balance or imbalance. And then he will say, oh, too much yin, dial up the yang. And he'll give you some herbs or medicine or say, go out in nature to do this, that, and the other. It's only about rebalancing the imbalance, right? And if a Chinese doctor were to diagnose the state of our world today, that's all he would say. He's saying, where is the yin-yang imbalance? And then he would say, too much yang, not enough yin. And who is going to rebalance it? Each of us holds the balance inside us. And then the collective returns to balance if the individuals are balanced.
That's how it works. That's how it works. Yeah.
So it's an inside job.
It's an inside
It's
job.
an inside job, always. And the Indic tradition have the icon of the Ardha Narishwar, right? The half male, half female divinity. So when we as humans are capable of becoming divine, what would that look like? We would become Ardha Narishwars. We would be equal parts masculine and feminine, Shiva and Shakti, in a unique combination that makes you, you. And no two people are going to be the same. Okay? And only when you find your unique combined balance will you experience what's called wholeness. Not just physically, but also emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So it's just that one goal, to find the masculine, feminine within and to reconcile and harmonize them inside you at all levels. If one is lost and shattered, you will not be healed and whole and functional.
So, do we want to talk about Shakti and Sophia and then continue on with this, unpacking the stories? Tell me about Shakti.
I was going to say, you go first.
You go first.
Okay. Okay, I think the audience perhaps knows Shakti more, but let me keep it brief so that they can listen to you. Shakti, as I already said, is the feminine side of divinity, and that the divine contains two poles. There is consciousness, that is the principle, or the Shiva, consciousness principle, and there is Shakti, which is its creative energy, right? So the divine is a two-in-one being. Oneness has a two in it, and there is consciousness, which is the steady state that witnesses and holds the creative divine feminine energy of Shakti, and then the dance of the two and their desire to experience all combinations of themselves goes out there and creates the manifold universe, right? So Shakti is the creative matrix, the creative principle of divinity, and therefore she's called the mother because she's the source of all creation, of all forces, of all energy. Everything comes out as a spandan, as a vibration first. Out of silence and nothingness is a frisson that comes out first, that first desire. So in the beginning is desire, but it's a divine desire to know itself, right? The two who wish to know themselves in unity in infinite ways, right? And so from that comes the many, many things that each one of us is, right? So that in a nutshell is Shakti, but then Shakti, of course, is energy inside you, the feminine principle inside you, but equally, if you want to worship Shakti on the outside, nature is Shakti, right? Mountains, rivers, forests, ground, everything can be worshipped as a being, a goddess, or a god, and you can enter into relationship with that. And all those are aspects of Shakti as well, children of Shakti, so to speak, or units of Shakti, right? And then you also have actual beings, divine beings, personalities. You have at a great level Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, but then you have their energy, creative forces, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Parvati, right? And then Parvati has got the Dasha Mahavidya. So it goes on and on and on. The Indic pantheon is myriad and massive. And then culturally, that same vibration is received and expressed in a cultural way. So the way the goddess and Shakti is held in South India looks a little different from the way she is expressed or even named in North India. But the vibration is what's the same. So if you want to say, oh, this temple, the goddess in the temple on the corner of my street, who is she, right? And there's a good chance if you know Sanyam, which is you understand her unique quality of this particular goddess aspect of Shakti, if you know that, you may find yourself in a temple in the north of India one day, and you may feel the same vibration. And then you say, there she was called that and she looked like that. Here she's called this and looks like this, right? So Shakti can be related to, you enter into deep, loving relationship with her as mother, right? So the one name Sri Aurobindo just gives her is mother. But mother has forms and names and ways to know her. And she has cosmic functions. So if she has to provide the function of wisdom, she comes as Maheshwari. She has to provide the function of strength, she comes as Mahakali. She has to provide the function of harmony, she comes as Mahalakshmi. She has to provide the function of perfection, she comes as Mahasaraswati, right? So these are beings who hold the divine ideal or concept or value that is needed in the creation, right? So they hold it. So when you enter into relationship with that divinity, her boon, her gift to you is that quality. This is Shakti. Who is Sophia?
Who knows? I'm joking about that, and also I'm serious. The Sophianic tradition is a tradition of mystery. It comes from the mystery schools dating back to Egypt, and then winding their way through Greece, the Eleusinian mysteries, the Delphi temple. So there's a long history and tradition of mystery around Sophia. And we are just only starting to really remember that now. But in essence, Sophia is the divine mother. Same. So when you have the Godhead is all oneness, and then it splits into two. The first split is into Divine Mother, Divine Father, Shiva and Shakti. And you might call it, in the Christian tradition, we call it Christos Sophia, the Christ and the Sophia. So the feminine divine in this way of understanding is, we also have it as consciousness on the masculine side, pure consciousness. And on the feminine side, we have it as love. So consciousness and love. And from love, when Sophia splits out of the Godhead, the reason she splits, she creates that separation, is because she's longing to love and be loved by an other. In oneness, there is no other. There's no one to love. There's no one to be related to, in relationship with. And so the whole purpose of divine feminine in this way of understanding is relationship. The love between two others, or 15 billion others, So it starts at the very highest level. That's how it starts. Sophia is also known as the principle of wisdom, the goddess of wisdom, the deep, deep knowing. So you have mystery and then you have knowing. It's kind of a polarity, right? There's everything we could not possibly know. We could not possibly know in the mystery of God, goddess. And also, we do know some things. And the knowing of Sophia comes through in a Gnostic way, if you know what I'm talking about there. It doesn't actually come from studying books and texts, teachings, and like that. It comes directly through from our direct connection to Source. So the Gnostic way of knowing is what I showed you in my story. This is how I know about the dismemberment of the masculine in the West, because I had an experience that I can now share with you and teach from my experience. I've had many of those remembrances, and it's very hard in this way. It's very hard to pass the test of proof. In the Western way, the masculine demands proof. There's a sort of scientific, standard. Did you read it in a book? Did it come from a scientific experiment? Is there a theory about that? That's the Western masculine dominant way of thinking. But Sophia does not operate like that. She does not. I mean, I have lived this in my own life. I was a scholar, I mean, teaching leadership at Harvard all the way up, up to the very top of scholarship, and working with Ken Wilber on integral theory and all these amazing scholarly things. But when Goddess came to get me, she said, yeah, enough of that. Enough of that. Use your own knowing. I will teach you. So this is Sophia, is the direct knowing through direct experience of the divinity. And the other one, I think you also mentioned this, is the other one is the Christ Sophia, that understanding, that realization, the knowing within that there is divinity here. And the receptivity to continue to drop whatever is not aligned with our own inner divinity, and to open to receive more and more and more of what we would call the light of Christ, the universal Christ. But the feminine aspect of the Christ is Sophia. So they go together. But she has been very lost and forgotten in the West. It's tragic. And what's happening now is that I mentioned earlier, her priestesses, those of us who have been with her a long time, are coming back. One of the major things that happened is the Inquisition. There have been many things that have happened, but the Roman Catholic Church did a real number on the divine feminine and wrote out Mary Magdalene from the whole story. Magdalene was Yeshua's partner, like Osiris and Isis. They taught together. She was a priestess, a divine being in her own right, a realized being in her own right. And they taught together, they healed together. And she continued that work after he was long gone off the planet. But it was Constantine that rewrote that story. And literally now, we are just now starting to find traces of scripture that were redlined and rewritten to exclude her from the story. There's proof of that. So the Christ and the Sophia have always belonged together. Just as Osiris and Isis belong together, just as Shakti and Shiva belong together. So many examples of that in our world, but in the Western tradition that has been mostly dominated by Christian teaching and Christian church, she has been long forgotten. So there was the Inquisition, in which many of the women who carried this wisdom were exterminated, murdered, killed. It was a Holocaust of women. And those of us who lived through that time I'll tell you this from my own remembrance. One of the first remembrances that I had was of the Inquisition and of being killed and tortured because I was in service to Goddess. And the church forced me to renounce my vows to her, lest I would be killed. Basically they said, your choice is you can renounce your vows or you will be killed. I renounced my vows and they killed me anyway. And that's what happened to so many thousands and thousands of women in the West during the Inquisition. So now what's happening is it's been 500 to 700 years since then. And the soul wounds that were imparted on through that kind of violence, that the inquisitors knew what they were doing. When you force someone to renounce their vow to God, that creates a soul wound that lasts for many lifetimes, many hundreds of years. It takes about 500 to 700 years to be able to come back from that. And that's what's happening now. We're coming back. We're remembering. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. You know, talking about scholar, we have a scholar friend, Dr. Neela Bhattacharya. She's written the book, The Absent Mother God of the West. And I want you to talk about, we go into churches today, cathedrals today, and there is Jesus, there is Mother Mary, but where is the icon of Sophia? I've never seen one. And sometimes you may see Mary Magdalene, but you do not see Sophia anywhere. I mean, what does she look like? Who is she? Does she have a name and does she have a form? Like Kali has a form and Saraswati has a form. What is the form of Sophia, and is she worshipped anywhere? Have you seen a temple? Now, I know in the first church of Christendom in Turkey was called the Hagia Sophia. And I remember thinking, wow, they use a word like Sophia for a church? So tell me about that.
I don't know a whole lot about it, but I remember our story.
Yeah.
When we really connected. The first time we really connected, we had a professional connection previously, but the first time that we really connected in an intimate and spiritual way, Nilima was about to go to Turkey to see the Hagia Sophia, and I said, I have to go with you. She was literally about to get on the plane, so I couldn't physically meet her there, but I got up in the middle of the night and sat at my altar, and she called me on WhatsApp from the temple, and we visited with Sophia at the Hagia Sophia there. So, but I don't have a lot to say about that. What I can say is my understanding from my own remembrance goes as far back as Egypt and started with Isis. And the temples of Isis were devoted to Sophia, Divine Mother. And it got passed along through traditions. And the lineage is sometimes called the lineage of the rose, if you've heard of that. There's a sisterhood of priestesses who are connected as the lineage of the rose and the Sophianic tradition, Divine Mother Sophia. But there are not a lot of, that I know of, temples in her honor. She literally was kind of rewritten out of the story. But when you mention Magdalene and Mother Mary, I can tell you how I relate to that. In my model of Sophia leadership, the Sophia model, the masculine and the feminine are both divided into two aspects. So you actually have four, two feminine, two masculine, and each one of them has a dynamic aspect and a static aspect. So for example, in the masculine, the dynamic aspect is that part of that way of being that makes things happen, builds cities, enforces boundaries, like that. And the static aspect of the masculine is all about the mind and the theories and the science and the rules, and the containment of energy. On the feminine side, what he's trying to contain is her wild, creative force that can be chaos without his containment, right? So that's the dynamic feminine, is that Kundalini force, that like, whoa, wild Shakti, crazy, creative, the thing that actually can bring a human soul out of the universe and into manifested form. That's the dynamic feminine. The static feminine, and you mentioned play and creativity and art and music, and all of that is dynamic feminine. The static feminine is the mother archetype, the one who holds it all in an embrace of love, and no one is excluded. Everyone is loved. Everyone gets their needs met. Everyone gets cared for. You know, everyone can come to the mother's milk, and she just pours her milk and honey out for everyone. That's the static aspect of the feminine. And so I tell you this because, not because I'm teaching you a leadership model, but because this is how I understand Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. So Mother Mary holds more of the aspect of the static feminine, the great mother, the one who lets it be, let it be, right?
Sing.
She holds it for everyone. She holds everything for all of us. Mother Mary, it's all good. It's all welcome here. And Magdalene holds the aspect of the dynamic feminine, which is more passionate, more transformative, more fiery, you know, and I'll say even sensual and sexual, and you know, there's just a lot going on over there. And that is the aspect that in the West, and I imagine really all over the world, that the patriarchy has attempted to push down, to squash, to dominate, to contain, because it can be dangerous if it's not contained, right? But then we get over-containment, like the over-containment of completely wiping Mary Magdalene out of the history books, out of the story, or killing all of the witches. You know, that's what happens. So that's how I relate to Mary and Mary.
Thank you. This concept of Sophia kind of being a dual aspect, right? She's got Mother Mary, which is the womb space, the wisdom perhaps, and then she has the Magdalene, who is the love space, right? So it's like the two-poled Sophia, the divine feminine, at least the way you've described it so far, has these two aspects.
Yeah, and of course, and she has all her goddesses and, you know, different aspects and versions of her. But it's not like here where you have a cohesive pantheon and they all relate to each other and all their stories are together. We don't have that. We have, you know, disparate pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to open it for any question more on Sophia. You know, have you got a sense of, maybe we can sum it up like we did yesterday when we were tuning in. So if Shakti is, what was it we said? Shakti is feminine power, Sophia is feminine wisdom. And both the word power and wisdom is expressed in a unique way when it's given a feminine expression, right? So feminine power of Shakti can be fierce, but it's always from this place of intense love at the same time, the love of the mother, right? So even a Kali can be fierce, but she's doing it out of love for the truth, right? She's not just being destructive for the sake of being destructive. So can you talk about wisdom that is feminine? I liked what you were sharing yesterday. It's not the dry wisdom of the masculine, which is wonderful. We need the father wisdom as well. But what does feminine wisdom look like in the world? What is it experienced like? When are you feeling Sophia? How is she expressed? How is wisdom expressed in a feminine way?
Yeah, I started talking about that. I'll say a little more. It's for me, it's an embodied knowing that comes from direct experience. That is feminine wisdom. It's not something that you learn in a book. And Mother has told me so many times, you know, people ask me, my students ask me all the time, what books do you recommend? And I have to tell them, well, she actually doesn't advise me to read a lot of books about the goddess. I'm not, you know, I haven't read books about Mary Magdalene, but I know her. I have a relationship with her. I know her vibration. I know her scent. I know when she's present in the room with me. I know there's just a deep, it's like an embodied knowing that comes from experience. That's what I would call feminine wisdom, as opposed to on the masculine side, we would call it knowledge. It's more mental, and the feminine wisdom is more embodied. It must have come through the heart, not the mind. Comes through the heart and the body. The womb holds a lot of wisdom as well. There's 3 centers in the body of knowing, the mind, the heart, and the, what do you call it? Womb in the feminine, but what do you call it in the hara? Is that what it's called? The hara, yeah.
Swadhisthana.
Yeah. So feminine wisdom is centered in the womb and informed by the heart.
I think those of us who have been socialized in very patriarchal societies where the feminine is not valued and the feminine ways of being are not valued, even the women end up being trained to be super smart mentally, right? And even the women end up not having been in touch with their heart wisdom and their womb wisdom. And then it takes a lot of unlearning to come back to this, right? So these are all the wounds of having been overly masculinized and having lost connection to the feminine.
And I would add one more thing that's coming to me now, and that is the relational aspect. There's wisdom comes through knowing the other. So in my training, because we don't really have priestess training in the Sophianic tradition. I'm creating it because it just doesn't exist. But so I have had to learn from masters, mostly in the indigenous Native American spiritual lineages. So in that lineage, we learn very strongly all the time to connect with our relatives in the earth, on the earth plane. So the rocks and the stones have wisdom that we can connect to and learn from. The animals have wisdom and medicine that we can connect to and learn from. The plants, I have really deep relationships with plants and plant medicine. And in my temple, we work a lot with plant medicine to access our own wisdom, but it comes through the catalyst of the sacred plant. So I would add too that feminine wisdom has a way of being in relationship with the natural world and accessing wisdom that way.
Can you give us, from your experience, 1 or 2 stories, instances, where you entered into relationship with a rock or a stone and what wisdom you got from that, or with an animal?
Sure. In 2022, Magdalene called me to go to France, and I went on this, it's a long story, I won't tell you the whole story, but I went on a solo pilgrimage in southern France, which is where Mary Magdalene went after the crucifixion, and she stayed for many decades and did a lot of teaching and healing. And so I was guided to go on this pilgrimage, and she led me around, and I went to the mountain. Is called Saint Baume, La Sainte Baume mountain, where there's a cave where it's said that she lived for the last 30 years of her life. So I'm hiking up the mountain. I have no phone. I have nothing with my luggage, didn't arrive. I'm just like literally wearing the clothes I flew on the plane with. I'm hiking up the mountain, and one of the stones stops me. First of all, I come to this like T. It's like a T in the road. You have to go left or right. And right to the right is where the cave is. But the stones started talking to me and said, "Come over here, we have something for you." I went and sat with the stones, and they said, "You need to go to the left." And I was like, and they said, "Oh, and by the way, when you get home, you need to spend more time in the temple and less time on the computer. But they sent me to the left. I didn't know for another hour or so. I went to the left, and the trail took me all the way up to the top of the mountain where it is said that Magdalene would go to eat the light. She would eat the sunlight. She would receive the divine codes coming down. And so I stayed there for about an hour, and then I came back, and then I got the green light to go ahead towards the cave. And as I'm walking towards the cave, I saw there was a group of monks, loud, boisterous. I would even say their energy felt disrespectful, and they were coming out of the cave. And I realized that the stones had sent me in the other direction so that I would not have to be in there with them. And I got to be in the cave by myself, all by myself. And that received so many transmissions and memories and blessings while I was in there by myself. But if I had not listened to my allies, we call them allies. If I hadn't listened to my relatives, the stones, I would have missed all of that.
Wow. So in the Indic tradition, we don't have so much of a relationship and tuning in to, I mean, I'm sure in the more, in the villages and things, there's more of that. It's easier to worship a stone and a tree and have a relationship. But I really admire the fact that you can make that a practice and it becomes a yoga, right? To be able to tune in to a stone or an animal and to be in that feminine wisdom way with them and learn from them, receive from them, be in reciprocity and relationship with them. That is a Sophianic quality, right? That is what you're telling us here. That I don't have that. I wish I did. I don't. I try to have it. I try to talk. I go to the banyan tree near the Matri Mandir and I try to have a conversation, but I have yet to have it talk back to me. So I'm always so delighted when people like you share your relationship with non-human intelligence, right? It's amazing. And so can you speak a little bit about, even though it's not the Christian tradition, the feminine wisdom tradition of the indigenous, where everything is a relative? Say a little bit more about that.
Everything is a relative, yeah. And in North America and South America, it is the indigenous tribes who have kept that wisdom for us while Christianity kind of took over the world. But it used to exist even in the cultures that we would call white. There's an indigenous tradition in Ireland, in England, in Scotland, for example. The stones are teachers there. There's a lot of ancient wisdom from the Druids, for example, that is stored in the stones. And you have to know how to approach in order to retrieve it. They just won't just tell anyone. Crystals are the same way. Crystals have a lot of capacity and wisdom to share, but you have to be in relationship with them. If you're mistreating, if you're coming with ignorance or some kind of like transactional mindset, give me, they will not give it. You have to be in a heart-based, sacred relationship, just like with plants. Tobacco is another one of those examples. It's a sacred master plant. Tobacco is a master plant, but it is so abused by humanity that it has a hook. If you abuse it, it will hook you. If you treat it as sacred and you start to build a relationship with it, if you come to it with humility as a teacher, it will offer its blessings and healings.
Are there any more? Is there more curiosity about who is Sophia? Go ahead and ask. Yes.
Yeah, so I came across this channel text. Yeah, I came across this channel text, Glittering Gems of Golden Light or something like that, where somebody has channeled Sri Aurobindo or claims to have. There, I really resonated with that text. So that's why I'm talking about it. So profound that it was talking about these projects going on across the world, especially in the West, I'm presuming, where especially in Greece, they have Hagia Sophia project, which now you mentioned in Turkey. So that's how I got hooked to this talk. Actually, I was like, Sophia, I know this from somewhere, and so it feels like as co-creators, beings, we are we have manifested as a collective to suppress this energy of feminine energy, especially in the West. I don't see myself outside of the West either. Like it feels like it's still here. Like so, if it's showing up now, like after 500 to 700 years, and I'm glad that you're taking this plunge into this world to bring that light. So, does it feel like people are reopening to that idea, and hence it's reflecting in this physical world? That is, internally we are reopening to the Divine Mother in her wisdom and heart wisdom and the other aspects you mentioned. So uh, is it from the heart that we are changing, that it's showing up, beings like you are showing up? Because I feel like if we don't ask for it, like Sophia won't come, right? Like it's like, unless we invite her, like how even Sri Aurobindo says, if you are in a crude way, Mahalakshmi will just fly away. Like she's not going to be around. So I feel like there is some positive news to take up, like that we are open. That's why we're having these discussions. But what can we do more, especially with the material world, like you mentioned, stones and everything. So I know I'm putting a lot of things into this, but just asking, how can we as conscious beings relate more with this source? And also, is Sophia also a physically incarnated being at some point, or she's working on the planes? Yeah, I'll close with that.
I can speak to that last question first. No, I would say no. She's incarnated in many different beings, including Mother Isis, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, so she has but she's not one incarnated being. She's the Divine Mother of us all. Mm-hmm. Did you hear another question in there?
I think he was asked. Check. He was also asking, are we more ready as a humanity? Because these divinities come when we ask for them. And if we are not worthy of them, they reject and leave. So could it be that women like you and more like you are now talking about Sophia? Is it also a sign that there is more openness to her now?
Yes, I experience it like a hunger. Like in the West, I come from the United States, so I can mostly talk about that, but also in Britain and France, where I've traveled, I experience it like a real hunger that, we've been so disconnected from our mother, and the women are really feeling, and the men too are feeling such a hunger for her. And, depending on the level of consciousness, it gets expressed in different ways. But there's a real hunger. And it's clear to me, we talked about this yesterday, that in the West, it's the masculine that's been dismembered. Yeah. It's the masculine that's been, we've just overemphasized all of the masculine values and the masculine principle to the point where the men are really suffering. The men who hold the divine masculine within them are really suffering, just like in my vision. There's a disconnect, a feeling of fragmentation, a disconnect, a kind of loss of purpose, and all these things. And in the women, what I've seen is just like in my vision, there's an anger and a kind of like, we can do what you can do, and I'm going to take over now, and you don't mean anything to me. And that is just so painful. It's actually painful for both genders. You know, so there's, I don't know how I got here, but I did want to bring that forward because you were saying it's different here. We're having a different experience, but it's like a mirrored experience.
So we were discussing yesterday that what the fragmented feminine sati story has done to the Indic woman is she's kind of broken up and become subservient to the patriarchy, and in a much more overt way, you know, willingly be the sacrificial mother, wife, etc., and not really fully holding her Shakti, right? Whereas that is what the world needs right now. She needs, India needs, and the world needs, is not for her to give up her power and her Shakti and be subservient to the social masculinity, but to actually claim her power so that she can truly complete the masculine and you know, complete the masculine within herself as well, right? So it's like two opposites. I think, what did we say? The Eastern woman must remember her Shakti, her power. The Western woman must remember her Sophia, her wisdom.
Yeah.
Because the Western woman seems to have power. I mean, she can stand up and shout and scream and agitate and go on women's marches and all that, right?
Yeah.
But where's the wisdom, right? So
Yes, it's not informed by the spiritual authority. This is what I'm talking about, the wisdom, the actual wisdom of Sophia doesn't do that, does not emasculate the man, doesn't dismember him, doesn't send him off into the underworld. You know, the Sophianic wisdom would invite him into partnership. And that is what the women in the West are learning. You know, the anger and the emasculating of the men is not the way forward. Not the way. We have to hold hands and come up into the light together.
So this is where we come to the topic of today, right? When Sophia meets Shakti, a new we as women becomes possible, right? So I think we come back to the idea of International Women's Day. Why has the UN called 8th of March International Women's Day? It's because women and girls are critical to the future of the planet. We need more women in the economy, ecology, technology, peace building. But if the Indic woman or the Eastern woman doesn't reclaim her Shakti, and if the Western woman doesn't reclaim her Sophia, we remain split. So somewhere there is a whole woman, a planetary woman, who holds Shakti and Sophia, right? And that brings the divine feminine into a new level of wholeness. That any person, regardless of East or West, North or South, can choose to now embody and step into and invoke in herself, right? Can a woman today say, okay, I wish to be a conscious woman, a conscious leader for these times. I wish to be a change maker. I wish to have impact. But for that, can I hold not just my power, but also my wisdom in a feminine way, right?
Yes. That is just perfect. Thank you. I don't have anything to add to that. That is the question. And we actually would like to turn this question over to you as we are thinking of closing in a few minutes. What are you pointing at?
I wanted to say just a few seconds back. I read this book called The Sophia Code, and it was written by a young woman who had been trafficked somewhere in the East Coast in the US. And
West Coast.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So at some point, she's kind of sort of doing her period of chopping wood, carrying water, and she experiences Sophia. But it sounded to me like Kundalini, like the energy. And they say that Kundalini can be experienced as a divine feminine, like you experience it as a feminine quality for some reason. So I wanted to share that. And just on this last question that you posed right now, What is the masculine sentence? So we have said that can the Eastern woman reclaim her divine power, the Shakti, and the Western woman reclaim the divine wisdom. And so what would be the masculine sentence? What can men do?
I think the idea of love, can the Western man reclaim love, and can the Eastern man reclaim consciousness? Right? So the way the duality is held in India, it's consciousness is Shiva and power is Shakti. In the West, it would be love and wisdom. So if we have wisdom in a feminine way, then love in a masculine way. Right? Because love is actually kind of feminine, but when the masculine comes into love, he completes himself. And when the wisdom is typically known as masculine, but feminine comes into wisdom, it completes itself. That's how I see it. What about you?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Now I feel confused by what you said. I think I want to actually invite the audience to just have a quick chat with each other. We have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Can we give them 5?
We have a comment here from
We have another.
Anu.
You just
Anu.
want to keep going with comments?
And then we'll do one, just last one here. Yes.
Yeah, actually. Okay. So everything you've been saying, both of you, and it kept bringing me back to Savitri. You know that very well, right? And it's a little story. So this is Savitri, what I'm referring to is an epic, which was written by Sri Aurobindo. It's a story, it's a character he takes from the Mahabharata. And in that, the prelude is that there's this king who is doing a whole prayer and yoga and yagnas to be able to get sons. He doesn't have sons. So in those days, of course, they wanted 100 sons. So he spends years and he goes through incredible journeys of the spirit to get his sons. And finally, he's given a boon. And in the boon, he's given one daughter. And that is, it's like she symbolizes then the power of the woman, of, the woman as power, but also the power of love, which has the capacity to save. Because again, I'm going back to your story of the man who is dismembered. In this case, she loses her husband to death. And then she traverses all the layers of consciousness of, let's say the human or the divine, spheres to confront death and to bring him back. So, so that I just wanted to bring that. And maybe, I have that little book with me all the time. So I'll just read you a few lines if you like. I'll need my glasses.
Savitri is the epic and ultimate culmination of Sri Aurobindo's message and transmission. So for us to receive that right now feels like a very powerful blessing.
It was just that it was very powerful what you all came up with. It's falling apart. Yeah, it's good.
Just need to have it. I think
You
need
need to
have
tap it.
closer.
Yeah, closer to your mouth.
Okay.
Closer.
Yeah.
Okay. So when the boon is given to the king, he says, "O strong forerunner, I have heard thy cry. One shall descend and break the iron law, change nature's doom by the lone spirit's power. A limitless mind that can contain the world, a sweet and violent heart of ardent calms, moved by the passions of the gods, shall come. All mights and greatnesses shall join in her, beauty shall walk celestial on the earth, delight shall sleep in the cloud net of her hair, and in her body, as on his homing tree, immortal love shall beat his glorious wings." And just to conclude the last few lines of that passage, a seed shall be sown in death's tremendous hour, a branch of heaven transplant to human soil, nature shall overleap her mortal step, and fate shall be changed by an unchanging will.
Thank you.
So I wanted to go back, Nilima, to the topic of the masculine and feminine balance, because when I entered the Eastern tradition, like the balance feels very simply described, and in your book it's just so logically, you know, in theory it just looks so beautiful, but in practice, being in this physiology of the woman and noticing the physiology of the man, the biology is different. So the biology ratio hormonally, like in me as a woman, is probably 20% of testosterone and 80% of estrogen, which makes me have more of these feminine qualities. And the masculine, when I embody more masculine, I lose my feminine, you know? So my question is like, what is that sweet spot, you know? What is that sweet ratio that actually makes us embody our feminine with the full deliciousness and still integrate the masculine, you know? So the masculine protects the feminine, but the masculine does not overtake the feminine. And I think lots of women in the West, and now I see also in the East, are struggling with, you know, just being overly masculine and just trying to prove like, I can do it, you know, I can match you. And that's not the game.
That's why I've been doing this work for 10 years. That's exactly why. And it's just, it takes a long time to learn that in an embodied way, and it's different for everyone. So the ratio you described, 80 to 20, that's different for everyone. So there's no quick answer. I'm sorry to say there's no quick answer. I've been working on it for decades. And that's why I do the work that I do in the West, because so many women in the West have burned out from running. This metaphor might help. It's like when you have a feminine system and you run a lot of masculine energy through it, it's like running a regular engine car with diesel fuel. It doesn't work over the long run. You can do it for a short term, but over the long term, it will fry the system. And that happened to me. I burned out. That's why I stepped into this work and this teaching. And it happens to so many women in the West because of that false belief that in order to make it in the world, in order to prove ourselves as worthy, in order to lead, we had to step into a way of being that was more masculine and not actually a match for our feminine systems. So we're learning that, and it had to be that way at first, you know, because as women stepped into the workforce, it was designed by men for men. And so we had to kind of fit ourselves into it. But now that we've been in the workforce for many decades, we're starting to learn it doesn't work for us. We have to do it differently. We have to relearn, reteach ourselves how to lead in a feminine way. And that's what this whole body of work is about.
Thank you. And I would just add that it's not easy. It's a practice. It's a sadhana. And therefore, the polarity map that we have in the book, like you lead from who you naturally are, which is your feminine, but you practice and sufficiently skill up your masculine and bring it in when needed, right? So remain in your healthy feminine, remain in your healthy masculine. When you catch yourself falling below the line into the unhealthy masculine and unhealthy feminine, find your early warning signs and then go back in action steps to return to health, right? So, and then everything can only be done when you are conscious enough and present enough. So always when you find yourself a little imbalanced, insert pause, Step back, breathe up and down your spine, say your Maha Mantra for presence. I have nothing to defend, I have nothing to promote, I have nothing to fear. All I need is within me. Remember, we have a presence Maha Mantra in that book. Say those affirmations, feel grounded, centered, neutral again, and from that neutral place, consciously say, what does this moment need? Does it need me to play my feminine energy in a healthy way? Or maybe for this moment, I need to play my masculine energy in a healthy way. Then you choose and you play it consciously. So you then respond. You don't react, right? And this is just work, work, work. Practice, practice, practice.
Thank you for that question.
So we are out of time. It's exactly 12:00. I think we are good, right? Are you feeling complete? A few last. How are we doing? We should hand over to Uma and Anu, actually. What do you want to do?
It's time to close, unless that there is a really new and burning inquiry. Anybody has it? I am very, very grateful to celebrating International Women's Day not in a narrow sense, but the widest possible sense. To know the divine feminine spectrum, which is stretching from the far east to the far west and coming to the depth of vertical light space, it's quite a phenomena to cover on the day, kind of a pretty trivial day called the Women's Day. I used to wonder what it is all about. But today it feels like, wow, it could have not been the better day than this. I would like to have a thank you for Unity Pavilion, for Anu reaching out, for Malika for singing, for Auroville Foundation to support the invitation, two lovely guests and Unity Pavilion and all the beautiful women and the tech team. So many people have come together to make it possible. May I invite Jaya to give the gift to the guests, please. To Nilima. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nilima Bhatt, for coming to Auroville and giving your precious wisdom. And thank you, Jaya. Now to Alison. Thank you, Alison, for being our guest today, coming to Auroville. Thank you, all of you.
I feel like Unity Pavilion is a bit of a home for me, because every time I come to Auroville, I come to Unity Pavilion. Again and again and again. There's some karma here. Thank you.
There is both of you have done a little mandala, and there's a little mandala was done over here. Would you like to say something and before we close?
I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for inviting me and welcoming me here from all the way across the world. I feel so blessed.
So that has crystals from different parts of the world. There is a rose quartz pillar, and that's because rose quartz is Sophia's energy. There is a pyramid, but it's circular, out of the black stone from Mexico, from Guachimole. Isabella may know. It's a place near Guadalajara. Circular pyramids. Then there is a green pyramid from Brasilia. Very special stone from there. And then there is a blue crystal for the womb waters and the healing. So in a way, they represent different elements. And it just felt, the feminine wisdom that is held in crystals.
And the feminine wisdom is held in the circle. The shape of the circle is feminine, and it means the whole. It represents all, the all that is, the inclusive of the whole. And the masculine is linear, is a straight lines. So we made the altar in a circle. And also I would add the rose. I brought those roses from my own temple. They were in ceremony with me with a group of women a couple of weeks ago, and they stayed fresh enough that I could bring them and lay them here on the altar.
All those roses are from Denver, Colorado.
From Colorado.
Can you imagine?
how gorgeous and fresh they are after they've been worshipped. Yes. And here is, we have Yamanya from Brazil. She's the goddess of the ocean waters. We have the Altai mother from Central Russia, Central Asia, Russia. We have Magdalene from Jerusalem. And this was a gift of Sophia from the Hagia Sophia in Turkey. That's just a face, but her whole body is there when you go inside and you see the whole mosaic. This is Mount Mary from Bandra. This is, of course, the Sri Yantra. And can you explain what you put here? Yeah, the mother symbol.
Not really.
Yeah.
Those are my personal. I didn't bring my public altar items, so I brought my personal altar items. So those are my personal ones that are hidden away in the bags.
Yeah. So it was just to bring in all the aspects of Divine Mother. Thank you. Thank you. Have a lovely, lovely rest of the day. Happy International Women's Day, and thank you to the men who have come. I hope you have seen that you receive and have the feminine inside you, just as women have the masculine inside them. So, whole man, whole woman. Maybe I have one lovely way I close it. It's a combination of two quotes. It says, "Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. But if your destiny is bound up with mine, come, let's walk together." So this is my invitation to all genders. It's not one over the other. Let's walk together because our destiny is deeply intertwined. Thank you.
Thank you.